Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to get some insight into the Eligibility Center at the NCAA. We are here at the headquarters at the NCAA in Indianapolis, Indiana, and my guest today is Felicia Martin. She is the Vice President of the NCAA Eligibility Center, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Anthony. Glad to be here.
So usually I start my guests where they went to college. So where'd you go to school?
I am a native Mississippian, and I actually went to Jones County Community College first before transferring to Mississippi State. I got my bachelor's and my master's degree from Mississippi State.
Great. So we go from graduating college to where you are today. How did the path take you?
The path was a little bit unusual for me because I was pretty sure that I'd be on a university campus, but in student affairs, not athletics. I never thought about athletics, but what I tell everyone is that I was passionate about the college student. So between 18 and 23, I knew that they needed some assistance. So I made a decision to not just work on a college campus, but to work in athletics with student athletes. I got my first opportunity at Texas Tech in 1999. So that transition was incredible for me. I was able to use lots of the skills that I'd learned from student affairs, work with a group that I'm passionate about, the college student athlete, and to grow. I went from being a practitioner and doing some legwork on quite a few programming to an opportunity to lead and be in an athletic academic services office, and it's led to a wonderful career.
Great, fantastic. So let's get into the Eligibility Center. Give me the role of the Vice President of the Eligibility Center.
My job, in a nutshell, is to make sure that my team is in the best possible situation to work with our student athletes and our membership. What I want to be sure that we're doing is leading in a way that is best for not just our college coaches and our administrators, but for our high schools and our parents and our coaches. The Eligibility Center's role is to make certain that there is a resource, a service, and we're partners for both our membership and for our high schools and our high school students.
So how about the focus? What's the focus of it?
Every day, what we're doing is making certain that students are in the best possible situation to get college scholarships, to go to D1 and D2 schools and participate in the sport that they love. So day to day, what we're doing is academic certifications and amateurism certifications. So in a nutshell, there's an initial eligibility standard that all the students who receive those scholarships must meet, and we are the office that partners with our membership to make certain that that process happens from a high schooler to a prospective college student athlete.
Wow.
Yeah.
So certification you talked about. The certification process. What is the certification process for the Eligibility Center for the student athletes coming in?
Globally, it's making certain that we have all the academic credentials that a student needs in order for us to verify their academic certification. So they're meeting an initial eligibility standard, taking 16 core courses, having a standardized test score on file, meeting a 2.3 GPA. And that's what we're doing. We're gathering that information, monitoring it, helping the student, and communicating to our membership about that certification. The other side of the academic certification is the amateurism certification. That's the verification that students are giving to us to make certain that they're amateurs and still able to compete in college sports.
So what do you consider amateur for the student athlete?
Amateur for us is a student who's not been professional or done things that could render them not eligible for a college scholarship based on participating on a professional sport, working with an agent, excess of benefits. It's a number of things. We've got some bylaws and legislation that helps to guide that, but we're working with the student, with the school, and with the parent to verify that status.
And how does one verify then? Through the portal?
Yes, so there is a portal. So each student athlete ends up with an account, and from that account, he or she can look at every single academic document that their high school uploads. They can see the standardized test scores that the testing center provides to us on their behalf.
Wow.
And our membership can actually use that portal to monitor it the same way. So a part of the amateurism certification is is about the student sharing with us what their previous participation has been. And so they upload documents, they answer questions. They're working also with compliance administrators on their campus to answer those questions. So we use the information they give us to help us to determine that.
So priority of the student athlete.
For us, the student athlete is the priority and anything connected to that student. So of course, from high school to college, there are a number of things that are different. But first and foremost, what we say to our students is the priority is education. The priority is academics. It's just like high school, no pass, no play. And then beyond that is making certain that they are well aware of all the safety and well-being differences that will happen between high school and college.
Yeah.
We want to get them better educated about head safety and concussions. We want to talk to them about making sure from a diet standpoint that they're having the proper nutrition, sleep. Our Sports Science Institute has been doing a number of studies and research around lack of sleep and how sleep deprived our young men and young women are. So there are a number of things from health and safety. In addition to that, there are also the life after sport aspects of it. As many of our student athletes want to be professional, most of them will be professional in something other than sport. And we want to make sure that we're arming them with not just majors that they can succeed in, but academic pursuits that help them with the job. We want to make sure that they're engaging in a way that prepares them for life experiences.
Do you have an example of what kind of help you give them for that job afterwards?
Yes. So our Eligibility Center more or less gives a lot of information about what they're going to experience once they're on campus. It is at our membership on those university campuses where they engage in student athlete development or student athlete affairs programs. And some of that engagement isn't just about major selection and what I want to be when I grow up, but actually getting them invested in resume critiquing and mock interviewing, setting up job opportunities for them to model or to actually shadow people in those professions. There are these opportunities that our campuses are providing that are more or less about making certain that they have options. So say you want to be a Major League Baseballer, that's awesome, but what are you going to do to pay the bills if you don't get that opportunity?
Right.
So most of our campuses have fully functioning student athlete development programs that provide career development.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
So that brings me to my next question. College campus life for student athletes. What's it like? What happens?
There is so much to that question, Anthony. I think first and foremost, people need to understand the time commitment. These young men and young women are dedicating 4, sometimes 5 years to both be a solid student and participate at a very high level in their sport. So their mornings start really early with training. And then they're in classes. Most student athletes have to take at least 12 credit hours. And so on any given day, they can be in class until noon. And then they've got practice. And then they need to go to the training room. And then most of us have in place something called study hall to make sure that they're designating as much time to their academics as they do to their sport.
Right.
So a week in a student athlete's life, depending on the season, is packed. Their commitment, the kind of dedication that they're given, they're being regular students, but they also have the investment in being a high-performing athlete. And that means other time, video, travel time, working and individuals with their coaches. So there's so much more to that experience.
And that's a big question that a lot of the parents have for their kids to go to schools. They always tend to say, my son or my daughter goes to a Division I program. It's all about the sport. It's never about the academics. What's your take on a question like that from parents?
The question is that in most cases, that student is investing equally in both. To perform at a high level, to get the experience that they have as a D1 and a D2 student athlete takes a huge investment, both athletically, but again, it is a college campus. They do have academic requirements. And so for a parent, it will look like, oh my gosh, you don't get a chance to live in that. And for about 4 years feels like that because their day-to-day is about being, again, a high-performing athlete and a well-rounded student. So that time commitment is real and it's there, but the investment, I would say, is equal.
Okay, yeah. The other thing that comes up is the role of the NCAA with high schools, guidance counselors, athletic directors, coaches. What is their role with each one of those different?
The role that our high school administrators and our high school community plays, particularly with the Eligibility Center, is critical. Those students that we end up getting on our campuses belong to them first.
Yeah.
We can't even do the academic certification without their support and their guidance. What we have is a high school portal, so any designated high school administrator can assist any young man or young woman who wants to be a college student athlete by going to that portal and uploading necessary things with core courses. They upload their transcripts. They're also a part of the education, because in addition to a guidance counselor or school counselor saying to them, this is what you need to graduate from high school, that person can also give them guidance on NCAA approved courses that would help them with their standard. I think our high school community is one of those areas and those stakeholder groups that don't get as much credit as they actually deserve. We've got about 40,000 high school accounts in our portal right now. And out of that 40,000, more than half of them are uploading transcripts on behalf of student athletes between May and August of every year. And so that investment that the high schools have in making sure that students are getting quality high school education and ready for either work or college after the fact, we understand how important their job is and their role is. But there's a portion of what the Eligibility Center does that we couldn't do as effectively and as well as we do without their support.
Yeah. So the members of the institutes at the college level, what's the collaboration that the Eligibility Center does with all of the members?
Yeah, our role with our membership and with the universities that are as invested in the eligibility of those student athletes, or we are, it's so deep and it's so active. First and foremost, those student athletes are being recruited by one or more of those colleges, and so for them to monitor, meaning the administrators on those campuses, to monitor the students' academic process, they have to activate them on our institutional request list. That's an IRL, and that way they can see everything that's happening with that student as he or she progresses through our center. In addition, when students are on those campuses talking to a coach about, hey, is this where I want to come? They're talking to the engineering department about the major that they want. That's also an optimal time for our membership to talk to them about the initial eligibility standards. We can't talk to them about that early enough because we want to be sure that they're well aware of what the requirements are and what they need in order to get to the point of actually getting a scholarship. Our membership is invested in other ways. Some of the young men and young women go through things in their high school lives that might interfere with the meeting an initial eligibility standard. So those high schools work with our colleges sometimes to actually submit waivers and petition on behalf of those students. The colleges are also working with my staff with making certain that the amateurism status is what it needs to be. Is there documentation that we're missing? We are what our membership wants us to be. We're a resource, we're a service, and we're partners. We're just as invested with those student athletes getting to their campuses as they are.
Now, doing the show for almost 5 years now, I've had a lot of coaches on from different universities, and they tell me that a big thing for them is trying to get transcripts from these student athletes. It takes a long time for some reason. Is there a reason why it takes so long? Is it more because of the parents and the students not getting it done, or is it because the high schools aren't giving it to them? How does it work?
So what we can do right now is go through a list of all the things that we think it might be, and there are a number of reasons why it might be more difficult for a coach to get a transcript in the recruiting process. What I can share with you is that we're always encouraging students, parents, and those coaches to get us that information as soon as they can. Until we have that, we can't advise. We can't help them to see what the roadblocks are, to share with them where they're not meeting the standard. So coaches actually getting their hands, so to speak, on those transcripts is also about a requirement that most of the universities have, that they want students at certain academic standards. So they're looking at their admissions requirement to see if he or she gets there. I think sometimes the lack of education or the lack of exposure to the process is also could come into play with parents or students not understanding how important it is and how quickly they need to get that to them, which is why our ed outreach team is always looking for new and innovative ways to get information to parents. There might be even some misperceptions out there about why we need the transcript. In no way are we ever looking for a transcript to keep a student from going to college. We're doing everything we can to help them get there. And so by alerting them of red flags and working with them as early as we can, that's helpful. So that's an interesting one, though.
Now, is there a particular grade point average that a student athlete needs to go on to college?
Not on to college, but definitely to meet an initial eligibility standard.
Okay.
So the college admission standard oftentimes is different from the NCAA's initial eligibility standard. For us, we want to be sure that a student achieves 16 core courses that are approved by legislation, not that it's not approved by the high school, but specific to the legislation.
Yeah.
He or she needs to take an ACT or an SAT standardized test, get that sent to us. We have a sliding scale, so that test score can be different based on how high your GPA is. And then the additional thing is proof of high school graduation. We need that proof so that we can make certain that they meet that standard.
And so how do you get that verification of that? Is it the diploma gets emailed to you somehow?
The transcripts. So most of the transcripts
Will
actually,
say at the end.
at the end of the student's high school career, it usually posts what we call proof of graduation. And as long as we see that on an official transcript, we can upload it and check that box for the student. That's one step closer to them getting on a college campus.
Now, I've had daughters that have gone out of college and tried to play at the college level. And it was, back then, it was a 9-digit number that they needed to show the colleges that they are eligible to play at the college level. Is it still like that today?
There is what's called the NCAA Eligibility Profile or EC number, yes.
Okay, so and then they use that number to say, yes, I qualify for the NCAA.
Now what
to play.
happens with that is the student actually, when they get their account, they're given that number. And that number, because the schools can now activate it on an IRL, they don't always need the number as long as they have them activated on the IRL. It is a quick and easy way when calling customer service and working with some of the compliance officers so that they can, if there are 2 or 3 Felicia Martins in the system, that they can easily identify me from the others. But that number is still critical, so that ID is.
Gotcha. So academic success of the student athlete, do you see a high percentage of students academically successful at college, or do you see a lower percentage?
Higher. Most of the research and the studies that we have available to us now says that student athletes are actually progressing at a faster rate than the average college student. Most of the time, the graduation success rate of student athletes is higher than the general student population, excuse me. So there is also what's called PTD, which is progress towards degree. So once you actually come through the initial eligibility process and you are a volleyball student athlete at ABC University, it no longer becomes important for you to stay connected to the EC, but to work with your campus and that compliance and academic services area to make sure you are making progress towards a degree. And because of those standards, our student athletes are actually taking more classes and being more consistent with progressing towards their degree than general students are. The scholarship and the discipline of actually practice and that requirement, I think it's a great nudge for our students who might not find academics as fun as others.
Yeah, so does the NCAA then stay on top of a lot of the schools just to make sure they're progressing well? Is that a force that the NCAA is trying to
Actually, it's
implement?
one of the things that our membership actually inherits by having an athletic department. So a responsibility of our campuses is to make sure that each of those students every year is certified for continuing competition. And that happens on campuses. So they're working with their college departments, their compliance office, and their academic services to make sure that the volleyball student athlete who is enrolled in the engineering course actually made the grade she needed to, progressed in a percentage that makes sense, so that it's just not a student on campus competing in a sport and not progressing with their degree. What the NCAA does have is APR or GSR, so there's an academic progress rate and then a graduation success rate that our institutions are submitting on an annual basis to the NCAA, and that in essence is the verification that your students are not only retained but are eligible to compete, and anyone who does not meet that metric every year isn't eligible to compete.
Wow. How about promoting? What does the NCAA Eligibility Center do in promoting at the high school level for these students?
Promotion for us is one of those things that we are continually challenged with, because as you well know, with a fast moving world and social media and websites and podcasts and these opportunities, we're doing everything we can to reach them. We've got an active social media presence where we're updating and asking people, share it with your friend. Here's the time to submit your transcript. Have you taken the ACT yet? So we're trying to be where our stakeholders and the high school community would be, but we also have a team, our high school review team, that is going to a number of conferences and workshops and working with different districts, making certain that if there are changes in our system or with our requirements that we're notifying them of it. I will tell you though that one of the things that's occurring with our school counselors, that retention isn't very high. And if high schools are not updating the key administrators, they might not be getting the information. So one of the points that I always stress when meeting any of our high school administrators is to remind them, go in and check your directory, make sure we're sending the information to the right people. We also have a high school newsletter. And so if you are connected in any way to the EC, you get a newsletter from us just giving you updates and recommendations. If you are connected by way of the high school portal, there are a number of resources there. YouTubes and PowerPoints and resource guides that you can use if you're a brand new administrator that's never worked with the Eligibility Center. There are lots of how-tos and call us at this number if you need us. But we try and make sure that we've got a number of resources out there. But there's always that district or new school that pops up that might not get the information. So we say things like share them with your friends so that everybody gets it.
Now, you said that you go to a lot of conferences. How many conferences are there in the United States?
Oh my gosh.
There's got to be hundreds.
There are hundreds, and just with the 40,000 high school accounts that we have, being able to get to each and every one is really difficult. So with the ones that we do get to, we try and say, are there others where we need to be? Is there another district or convention or coaches association that we can talk to make sure that they have as much information about the EC and what our process is, and that we are a partner? We can't stress that enough. We are here to make certain that student athletes know exactly what they need in order to be in the best position to end up on a college campus and to participate in a sport. So we want to talk. We want to talk to, we'll do phone calls. We do webinars. We do a number of things just to make sure that people hear directly from us and also can ask questions if they need them.
Great. How about any initiatives? What type of upcoming initiatives do you have for high school students?
Text messaging.
Okay.
That's one thing we've not been able to do and that we're really excited about. So we do now, if you've got an email address with us, or again, if you've got Twitter, you'll get a tweet from us with reminders. But we're thinking that text message is going to be a key for us to make sure we're talking not just to the parents, but to the students too. Quick messages, quick reminders. Hey, check this link out. Have you seen this video? Are you interested in this way? Just to make sure that they're connected and engaged. Another area that I'm not sure a lot of people know about, so in addition to our domestic student athlete population, we probably have about 200,000 certifications or registrations that end up being 150,000 certifications. Out of those numbers, about 7,000 of them are international students. So we're trying our very best now with some new staff and some new outreach to reach as many of our international markets as we possibly can.
Yeah, so do you find a lot of students from the international market coming into the United States?
Absolutely. Again, that number is growing. So this past year, I think our certification number for international students was right at 7,200 out of 200 countries that had actually engaged in some way with our certification. We've got a resource document that is ever growing. It's so big that we don't even do hard copies of it. You have to go to the web to pull it up. Just making sure that we have as much information about the different international academic requirements, because it's so different, and those credentials and what we need in order to certify those students varies from country to country.
Yeah.
And so we're doing everything we can to meet, again, with recruiting services and associations that are recruiting heavily. Our membership is really key. So as our university coaches are going out and recruiting in Ireland or Australia, we want to be sure that we're arming them with the appropriate resources so they can better talk about what the requirements are and the process for students to get here.
Do you see a lot of students from the different countries that ask a lot of questions because they're from a different country?
Absolutely, and that's been key for us, is making sure that the information that we're giving them isn't just about the initial eligibility standard, but also giving them a couple of leading and guiding questions so that as you're getting recruited by a university, by a particular coach, that you can ask them really key questions to help you. I can only imagine, I mean, Mississippian who moves to California, but
Yeah.
think about someone who is from Australia moving to Texas.
Yeah.
There's a huge learning curve. There's just lots and lots of information you wouldn't even know to ask. So we try and give some guidance about, so you're being recruited, here's some things you might want to ask, and not just about majors, but about support, taking a look at the other international students in the university. Are there other resources for international students outside of the athletic department that will help you with acclimating and becoming a part of that community?
Now, do you have a frequently asked question page online?
Yes,
That's
we've
where
got
people
lots
go?
of frequently asked questions in every single resource that we have, whether you're a high school coordinator or a coach or a parent of a prospective student athlete. On our website and in the resource guides, we have all of that. So we've got portals where you can actually click on what you're looking for and how we can help educate you, whether it's the definitions that we're using, what's an IRL, and clicking on that to find out, or what does it mean by prospective student athlete, or what's the difference between an initial eligibility standard and the college admission standard. So we try and do as much of that education as we possibly can so that people are making educated decisions about this next step.
So my last question is usually, what advice do you want to give to the parents out there and their sons and daughters that are going to the Eligibility Center? What advice would you like to give them?
Admittedly, this process is daunting. But what I'd like to encourage both parents and students to know is that we're here and we're a resource. We're a service, and we want to be your partner. Any questions they have, any additional information we can give them, we want them to have it. We need them to know that we are doing everything we can to champion this path for them so that they can have the experience of not just being a student, but a student athlete in a sport and getting a major and turning into exactly what your mom and dad want you to be, a productive citizen.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for your time, Anthony.
Yeah. So you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva. Until next time.